Now, I suspect that potentially the reason many people have joined into this podcast today is because you mentioned in your message that you got a place you can join, you can get 12%. And everybody's probably wondering, where is it? The big question, where do you get 12%?
Let me go back in time. Our church is almost 11 years old, and when we were about 2 years old, I talked about making 12%. And that was when everybody laughed because tech stocks were flying and all this kind of stuff. They said, why would you only want to earn that? Yeah. Then everything fell apart, and I preached the message again a few years later, and I said, well, you can earn 12%. And everybody's like, no, you can't. Yeah. You can't trust any of it. Now, here I am, years later, still saying the same thing. This isn't something that I made up. This isn't something that is a secret at all. This is just a fact that over time, good mutual funds will typically average 10, 12, 14, 15%. Mm-hmm. Now, what I'm not going to do is I'm not going to tell you what funds I'm in because I'm not here to do a commercial. And as soon as I tell you, they'll probably tank. That would be just great. But here's what I will do. I'll tell you that if you want to check out some funds, you can go to morningstar.com and you can see what funds rank. If you're going to invest in mutual funds, first of all, remember, I'm going to challenge you. Hopefully, you'll be out of debt. With the exception of your house. Right. And until then, you don't want to put money aside. You want to pay off your debt. Then let me just tell you about some funds I'm in. I'm not going to tell you what they're called, but I'm in a fund that started in 1973. It's a growth fund, and it's averaged 15.2% since it started. Now, some people get in, and they go, oh, it only averaged 2% this year. Yeah, well, next year it might average 22%, and that's what it'll do. Okay. Or it lost 8% this year. Well, an aggressive fund might gain 40% the next year, and that's what they'll do. Okay. Another fund that I'm in started in 1978, and it's averaged 13.9%. Another fund I'm in started in 1984, and it's averaged 13.46%. Growth and income fund that I'm in started in 1993, and it's averaged 13.65%. This company of funds I'm in, they have 6 other funds that have all averaged over 12% since they started. So it's doable. There will be some ups and downs. So let's just cover some basics about this just so we'll make sure. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to tithe. 10% goes to God. We're going to pay off our debt. Okay. Once we're out of debt, now remember, I'm just a pastor, not a financial guy, but then I would recommend that if you work for someone that has a matching agreement, what do?
Or you match whatever, give them everything.
Absolutely.
As long as they're going to match, it's free money.
Absolutely. Yeah. So your dollar counts as 2.
Absolutely.
So I would say then whatever you have, put toward maximize that matching fund. Now, this is where you'll want to consult an advisor. Most advisors will tell you at that point then invest in a Roth IRA. Most advisors say that. My personal advisor is the only one I know that he's more lukewarm on it. He's got his reasons. So talk to an advisor. Also, I forgot, if you're in your company and you're investing or whatever, make sure you know what you're in, because a lot of people don't, and things change. And some people have, they're for 30 years they're investing in a place that's really not wise. So make sure you look at what you're in there. And then let's say you're doing that. Let's say you've maxed out your investment through your company. Let's say you're putting aside as much as you can in the Roth or whatever your next level of investment would be. Then you might want to start investing beyond that. Mutual funds could be a good place over time. The people I've learned from said, don't ever put money there that you plan to touch in less than 5 years. If you're going to touch it in less than 5 years, don't put it there. Put it in a money market fund or something else. And you can start with $25 every pay period, just dropping it in. It's real easy. You can set up an automatic payment, and it can grow over time. Leave it there, forget about it, someone else will manage it. Other places, there's all sorts of places to invest. I talked about owning rental homes, and a lot of people went out and said, I'm going to buy rental homes. Please don't do that unless you've got a lot of cash, a lot of time, and know-how. It's not for everybody. Yeah. I prefer paid-for real estate in cash. I don't like to finance anything when I don't have to. But there's all sorts of different things. Don't be afraid to pay for advice. A lot of times, advice is about what you pay for. It's worth that. You get advice from your friends. Most of your friends are broke. Don't be afraid to pay for good advice, because it can be valuable. And then start somewhere. Start small. And if you didn't hear the message this weekend, we covered just some rules of investing and they might check that out and see what happens.
It sounds like the key, man, is just start somewhere. Get started and get started early whenever it's time.
Yeah,
Just get
the
after
whole
it.
thing, seek God, have a plan. Don't just let things happen.
Yeah, and in that plan, man, that's where they could go onto that online site, grab one of those tools, get those plans, and get those things done. Okay, so here we are wrapping up this series, Mind Your Own Business. We're finishing it all out. If you got to boil it down, just kind of, man, give me the most important thing to remember as we kind of move on.
Okay, well, let's start with money, since that's what this has been about, and then let's broaden it.
Okay.
First of all, those who are very, very poor tend to think day to day, and that's all they know how to think. Those who are poor tend to think week to week. The middle class tends to think month to month, paycheck to paycheck. The rich tend to think year to year. The very wealthy tend to think decade to decade. I would encourage you, wherever you are, let's take a step up. And let's start, maybe you're thinking month to month right now. Let's start thinking year to year, and let's try to expand that to where we're thinking decade to decade. Because when it comes to finances, that is very, very, very important principle. Let's think 3 years in advance. Let's think 5 years in advance. Let's think 10 years. Let's think 30 years in advance. And when you see how money compounds, then you can leverage it and do so much more for the glory of God over time. Now, let's take it beyond that. Let's think decade to decade relationally. Because a lot of times, if you're thinking day to day, you'll be tempted to use people. And you'll try to get something out of them instead of investing in them. Let's think long-term physically. Instead of eating that fast food today, let's think long-term with our body. Let's think long-term spiritually. Let's think long-term about our marriages and relationships. So I think that's a kind of an underwriting current.
Okay.
What did Jesus invest in? Did he invest in things? What do you think?
From the message, I'd have to say, obviously, is people.
Yeah.
Invested in people.
Jesus invested in people. So along those lines, when we think of investing, let's make our first thought not in money and things, but let's make our first thought investing in people. If we want to see the greatest returns, let's see them in people. Let's not get caught up in the things of this world. Let's only use them for things that will bring glory to God. And so I would say, kind of wrapping this whole thing up, let's just remember, we don't serve money and things. We serve God. Money and things serve us and serve the purposes of God. All that being said, I'd just say to you all, I hope that one day you are grossly rich, filthy rich, 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 rich. Maybe even in money, but for sure, rich in relationships, rich in friendships, rich in the love and the grace of God. Ultimately, rich in the things that matter most. So when you're investing, invest your life, invest them in the proper places, and then see the spiritual returns, see the relational returns, and sure, see the financial returns. And when God does bless you financially, remember, it's not ours, it's His. And it's not a sin to enjoy some of the blessings, but it's so much better to send it on ahead.
Man, Craig, thank you so much for everything you've poured into us during
Thanks
this
for
series.
doing this.
Yeah.
And you've just been a great example at 30 of someone who's been faithful with a little, and now God has trusted you with more kids, more influence, more friends, expanded leadership in the ministry, a higher income as you've been faithful. And I just want to applaud you for celebrating and living God's principles.
Well,
it's an honor to watch you grow up, and in 2 more weeks when I heal, I'll be able to whip you again.
Well, as you get older, those bones heal a lot slower.
I
so,
do. I do.
Man, thank you so much for just pouring into us and giving us all that information. And man, I hope our prayer is that, like Craig said, man, that you'll be rich, and if it's in money, man, all the better. And that we're going to hold it like this when God blesses us. And I pray that we all get to a place where we're looking decade to decade, not just financially, but man, it really speaks to me, the relational piece, just in all aspects of our lives, that God can look at our heart and see that, man, we want to honor Him with everything that He's given to us, everything that He's entrusted to us. And may our lives always honor God with everything, every part of it. My prayer is always that God will just absolutely infiltrate everything that I'm about, relationships, finances, the way I eat, everything that I do.